In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to format the copy in the main body text of the story. So if we take up where we left off, we have a picture box at the top of the page with a 1-point border around it. We have a caption text box underneath that and a headline text box underneath that. Now, underneath the headline text box, I need to draw another text box to put the copy, the story copy in. So I'm going to go back to my tools menu on the left and click on the T, the type tool, and draw, just like we did before, another text box underneath the headline text box. Now I can see the cursor is flashing in the text box, and if I had a story now, I would paste it in there. If you've got a story, you can paste it in there. If you haven't got a story and we just want to see some text, to format some text to see how it's going to look, then you can go up to the top drop down menu to type, and if you click on that and go all the way down, you'll see an option, fill with placeholder text. And if you click that, some gobbledygook text should appear in there, which allows you to see how text is going to look and to format it so it looks the way you want it to, the way it does on a newspaper. As I say, ideally you'll be pasting a story into this box, but for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm just going to use placeholder text. So if I go on my zoom tool, the magnifying glass at the end of the tools panel, and I go in a bit closer, I can see that this text is not how it's supposed to look on a newspaper. It's all in one column and it has no paragraph indentations. So to put paragraph indentations and columns in it, I need to click firstly on my top tool, my selection tool, and that's the tool I can use to move the text box around the page to push it a bit closer to the headline if I want. And whilst on this top tool, when the text box is clicked, if I go up here to the top right hand corner of the page, I can see number of columns an option. And at the minute it's set to 1. Well, I'm going to move that. If I click the arrow, oh, not to 7, I'm not. I can have it at 4 columns or 3 columns. 2 columns is too wide. 3 columns is okay. And 4 columns is okay. So I can have it at either 3 or 4 columns really. Both look okay for a newspaper. So if I have this as 4 columns, I can then zoom in a bit more if I want and have a look at the actual text. Now to me the text looks very gappy. It looks as if the leading is not quite right. And if you remember from the previous tutorial, leading is the space in between the lines of texts. So if I go on my text tool, my T tool, I can get back in that box. And if I highlight all of the copy in that box, I can change the leading. And the leading is up here underneath the font size, which is set at 12, which is okay for body copy for the story. We have to make it bigger for the headline, but for the story, 12 point is okay. The leading, however, is not okay at 14.4 points. That's why it looks a bit gappy. So if I take the leading down to the same size as the text, we can see the font size. We can see that the leading has pushed all of the copy tighter together. Now that is perhaps a little bit too tight. I think it needs a little bit more of a gap. Leading, as I said before, is generally around the same size as the font, but can be half a point or a point bigger depending on the font that you're using. So for this, I think the leading needs to be about half a point bigger than the font size. So I'm going to go up to my leading box, actually click in the box where it says 12 and manually just put in 0.5. Sorry, I need to have all the text selected to do that, sorry. So if I select all the text and go back up to the box and manually put 0.5 in there and then click off it, all of the text is just a little bit wider now, but not too gappy. So I think that text I think the leading on that text is okay now. However, it has no paragraph indentations. And if we look at any newspaper stories, we will see that the first paragraph, which is the intro, is full out, and that means there's no indentation on the first line. It starts right at the edge of the column, but all the paragraphs after it, if I put a paragraph in here now, you'll see it still starts flush against the edge of the column. All paragraphs after the intro should be indented. That's how we know they're paragraphs. Otherwise, it's not clear that we've moved on to the next paragraph. So to do that, I have the intro is already flush out. To put an indentation in each of the following paragraphs, I need to highlight all of the rest of the copy except for the intro, because I don't want to put an indentation in the intro. And then I need to go to my paragraph option. And that is under, again, back up the top menu to type and paragraph. Or you can do Control, Alt and T. And that will bring you up at the side of the page, the paragraph box. And as you can see, it gives you a few different options here. And the first box will put a full left indent on, which we don't want. But the second box will just put a first line left indent, and that's what we want. Every paragraph, the first line of every paragraph after the intro to have an indent. And we normally put a 3mm indent. So if I click this arrow so it goes 1, 2, 3, you can see the copy has all moved in on the paragraphs to have a little indent, a little 3mm indent. If I make an extra paragraph here, by clicking in and pressing return, it will put a little indent. It's no longer flush against the side of the column. That's very important for newspaper layout, that we have paragraphs indented, because they help the reader flow. It helps the flow of the story and helps the reader get through it in the right way and understand it in the right way to know that they've moved on to the next paragraph. So there's indentations. Indentations are in the story, but not on the intro, as is correct. However, the format of the copy at the edges is not quite right. If we look at newspaper pages, we'll see that the copy is not ragged on the right-hand side like this. It's straight on both sides. At the minute, these columns are set left or ragged right. It means the same thing. And we want them to be justified straight on both sides. So again, we need to highlight all of the copy in the box, Command A. And we need to look up here in paragraph again. And as we can see, it's on a line left, which we don't want. We don't want it center. We don't want it to align right. However, we do want it to justify with just the last line kept to the left. That is the style that newspapers use. So if we click on that box, we can see that it changes the copy to be straight on both sides. And now with indentations and straight justified copy on both sides of the column, it's beginning to look a bit more like a newspaper story. If we want to see how this is going to look when it's actually printed out, we can go up the top here to screen mode, and on the drop down menu, if it's on normal, you will be able to see the 5-column grid behind your stories and pictures. And if we go to preview, that will take it off and show you how it will look when it's printed. So you can see there that the columns, if we zoom in again, you can see that the columns are justified and indented as they should be for a newspaper column. And that's it.